Hey everyone, Larry Walsh here for Changing Channels, and we're going to talk about AI because why not? I mean, everyone's talking about AI. We can't stop talking about AI, and we can't stop using AI to create more content to talk more about AI. So this is just the world we live in, and it's rather remarkable. We are in such a dynamic period that it is in a constant state of change because the artificial intelligence technology is really just beginning to take off. As much as we've been using it over the last couple of years, the various GPTs, we are now entering a period where AI is really taking root in business operations and business processes, and also in the everyday routines of workers inside vendors as well as in partner organizations, and that's getting translated out to the customers. But this isn't easy. As much as AI is helping us become better and more efficient and faster, it also takes a lot of work to actually go through the process, the change management of understanding what is capable with AI and what we should be doing first, and then what the next things that come after it. And one of the companies at the epicenter of all this is Microsoft. And Microsoft is doing some remarkable things. Now, obviously, with the Copilot AI tools and the various AI infusions into its applications, Microsoft is one of the major players in the artificial intelligence revolution. But it's also a catalyst for change in the adoption of AI in the channel. Microsoft is doing some remarkable things and infusing AI into its channel operations, helping to expedite the transmission of information, the analysis of data, and the interactions with partners. It's also out there helping partners, its ISV community, its resellers, its integrators, its consultants, this army of hundreds of thousands of partners around the world. It is driving AI into those businesses to help make them more efficient and more effective. And that in turn is driving artificial intelligence down into the customers. It is a remarkable story. And that's why we've invited Nina Harding. She is the Corporate Vice President of America's Global Partner Solutions at Microsoft, to come join us on Changing Channels to talk about the lessons and the activities that Microsoft is undertaking in the AI revolution. This is Changing Channels. I'm Larry Walsh. Let's get into it. And welcome to Changing Channels.
What pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
It's great to have you. So, look, as I said in the intro, everyone's talking about AI. We just can't seem to shut up about it. It really is revolutionary. Although I like to think about things like, tools are just iterations of what came before, but now we're iterating on human thinking. And I'd like to start with your perspective on this. Is how do you actually look and assess the current state of AI, particularly in how we're applying it in channel operations and channel management?
Absolutely. Well, it is an exciting time. And I think there are quite a few unknowns, but there are a lot of things that we are learning very, very quickly. And it is certainly the technology that I think all of us have had to be as nimble and adaptive to. And it's transforming our experience of how we show up and what's really possible for all of our customers and in particular for our ecosystem. So when I think about AI, it's a core driver, in my opinion, for our partner-led growth and enabling a lot faster go-to-market and deeper customer engagement and scalable impact. When we look at it from sort of a use case where we're seeing the momentum in the market, we really see it candidly in about 4 different areas that are most meaningful for our partners and for our customers out there. First, you're seeing it enrich employee experiences, right? So how does it affect how I show up, what I can do in my day-to-day job? AI is used to automate some of those repetitive tasks, freeing me, our employees, to focus on the creative and the strategic work. Now, we all could use that, right? We've all been bogged down with challenging things. So if you think about that with like Microsoft 365 Copilot or GitHub, which helps people develop, it is increasing the productivity, well-being, and actually streamlining a lot of the workflows and how people are showing up. So we have some real results if you want me to share. So like we see even just around enriching that employee experience using Copilot, which is what Microsoft advocates, right? Which is integrated with M365. We're seeing about 10% more pipeline growth. We're seeing 23% faster close rates and 9% more revenue per head. That's pretty cool, in my opinion, because those are real metrics that matter. And I'm also seeing increased customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and I'm also seeing people be a lot more innovative. And that kind of brings me to the second point, which is the second use case that we're seeing quite a bit is around really reinventing the customer engagement and how AI is allowing us to have that more personalized interaction and real time understanding with conversational agents. It's helping us pull some of the historical data or experiences we've had, perhaps with a partner or with a client, and it crystallizes that. So when you're having that next conversation, you have the benefit of some of those themes that you've seen or those agitation points so that you can address them very concretely. What we're able to see is that's having a huge impact on call centers, and things like agent assists are there right now. And so you're using your people to be able to handle the more delicate situations and the more complex situations. And customers are really benefiting from these really quick answers to some of the self-service bots and AI-powered marketing personalization. The third area that we're seeing is really on reshaping business processes, right? So we're talking about the personal, right? We've been talking about how it's showing up for customer engagement. Now we're looking at it of how are you actually attacking doing business flows a little bit different in your like core operations, like underwriting things or claims processing or workflow automation. This all makes a lot of sense when we're talking about our partner ecosystems, right? We're writing deals together all the time and wanting to make sure that the AI is reducing those operational costs and burdens that we both see on both sides, right? And improving accuracy and consistency and predictability. And those are all keywords in an ecosystem, right? Which allows us to make better decisions together. And then the fourth area, that's the one that we love to talk about. That's where we're really seeing that bending the curve on innovation and where we're kind of getting into that Imagineering zone, right? Where AI is helping to do everything from helping our ISVs accelerate product development or our services partners answer customer needs faster, to prototyping, to experimentation of different models. And Microsoft supports this through things like Azure AI Foundry and different AI tools out there. But what we're seeing is this just energy in the ecosystem, building agents and really trying to work with their clients to think outside of the box of how they transform an experience versus just move the needle a little bit in operational efficiency.
One of the things that has always impressed me about Microsoft now, I'm obligated to say that I think ecosystem is a tortured word, but one of the things in all of my years in the channel, one of the things I've always admired about Microsoft is that it's always been a collection of collaborators. It's, you had your resellers, you had your integrators, but the real meat of the Microsoft value was always extended by the ISVs that work around you. And as I'm looking at the advent of this next era of AI, it's easy to see the ISVs coming along with you. But you just mentioned it, is that the agents really are becoming the connective tissue. And I'm marveling at this because we've done research for companies like Microsoft about partner readiness on AI and customer readiness for AI. And up until recently, it's always been, sounds good, but what's the real use case? And now we have agents being built up on these GPTs and on these RAGs and LLMs, and they really are becoming not necessarily the use case, but a use of these platforms. Was this part of like Microsoft's vision as you're out there talking with the partners? Did you anticipate this happening?
Yeah, well, yes and no, right? So I think once we looked at the assets of the different offerings that we have, we found ourselves in a really unique position, right? You look at our biz apps approach, right? Our business applications, you start looking at our productivity tools like M365, and then you start looking at what customers want to do with AI data, and then our strength in ISVs, which we are now just renaming to SDCs, software development companies, because quite honestly, we're seeing so many different companies morph in this direction. And when you start to look at the connective tissue, to your point, across those different experiences, that's where that agentic help is critical, right? You're starting to see that I can be in something like ServiceNow, but I can use an agent that connects me into M365, into Microsoft Word, and can automate those emails that need to go out, or go look at my financial data and do analysis for me. It's fascinating how all of those assets came together and then it became really a strategy. So I'm not going to give us full credit for coming out of the gates, 10, 15 years ago. But we are definitely seeing it, and it is a part of our strategy now.
So let's build on that, because it's, first of all, I think it's fascinating to think about renaming ISVs. And I'll just say if you're successful in getting the industry to go along with you on this, I applaud it, because ISV has always been sort of like not exactly the aptest way of describing some of these companies out there. One of the things that you've talked about, though, is for these companies, for your partners. So let's talk about your tier two partners, your resellers, and those that are actually working with the customers to become customer zero, that they have to internalize this first. Why is that so important? Microsoft has long been an advocate for its partners to adopt the technologies first. So is this a continuation of that philosophy?
Absolutely. And I think we're even more keen on it right now. And it's not just the channel partners, it's the services partners and the ISVs. And to be honest, some of the GSIs, the global services vendors, are some of the best adopters in the world right now of Copilot. What we're seeing is until you actually start making it a part of your personal productivity, the way that you engage, you don't really understand the power of it or how transformative it can be. I'll be the first to admit, I was one of the first at Microsoft to have access to some of these tools, right? As one of the executives here, they wanted us to kind of get to know what was coming and so forth. And in the beginning, I played with it and I did some kind of like fun little queries, right? Now it's a part of how I approach almost every customer, partner, employee conversation. I write my employee evaluations using it. I build business plans with partners around it. I understand industry trends. I understand what's going on with our competition. I can't tell you, I use it in every aspect. And I also encourage my team to do it. So we became customer zero. And then as we go out to our partners, they need to do that, because how can they advocate? How can they Imagineer with the end client if they don't actually personally understand how transformative it can be? And there is an inflection point in that journey. The hardest thing is getting people off what I call, like when you're going into the swimming pool, right? Just get off the mount, right? You have to dive in, and it's more than just playing with a couple of queries. You really start seeing it thread through. So every Friday, for example, in our organization, and we're starting to share this with all the partners, what are the top 10 tips around something? And it's eye-opening how much more productive and how much more sharp I am now that I have the advantage of Copilot actually helping me understand all the great information that comes at me and to me, and historically with partners as well.
Yeah. One of the things you just said, though, about understanding your competition better, I'll have to make a note of this. I didn't know Microsoft had competition, but I'll write that down.
You know what? Then we aren't in the right market. The markets need to have competition.
Yep.
I think we're in a great place, in particular because of our ecosystem and our partners out there. They're
Well,
absolutely fantastic.
yeah, look, I look, just to digress for a moment. Of course, I'm joking, but one of the things is that watching Microsoft over the last 10 years has truly been marvelous. It's not just been a reinventing of Microsoft from what it once was, but you can see that there's this continuous evolution that's just ongoing. And this is not a company, typically a company that a tech company of the age of Microsoft should be in that plateauing phase, and there's no sign of that happening. And I credit it to Microsoft as much as your ecosystem.
If I can just add on to
Yeah,
that,
please.
one of the things that I love, and as you know, this is my second time at Microsoft. And one of the big differences, to your point about that evolution, is the Microsoft I came back to 3 years ago is a Microsoft that's full of curiosity, has this incredible growth mindset, is much more open and nimble and curious, and listens a lot more, very, very customer centric. And to me, That is what is fueling this change. We have incredible products. That has always been one of the greatest assets of Microsoft. But now we're mapping that and matching that with that curiosity and understanding the customer and the customer's language so much better. And that, I think, in combination is what has become so powerful for Microsoft.
Speaking of curiosity
Mhm.
and your ecosystem, is one of the things that I'm watching is the sprouting up of these AI agencies. So they're not ISVs or what it is, software development companies. They are consultancies that are built around supporting customers on your platform. So they don't touch you, but they're touching you. They work with your customers, but they're working with your customers often outside of your view. What's Microsoft's perspective on these new AI helpers that are just seem to be everywhere now?
So we're encouraging of it. That's part of the reason, right? When we talk about reclassifying, going outside of just ISVs, we've had a long history of really embracing the developer community. And that's where a lot of this energy is also coming from. The agents, while you say they don't really touch us, they do, right? They have to be able to leverage the data that is captured, whether it's in Azure, whether it's even in third party cloud systems, whether it's in our biz apps, in their M365 experience. We are huge fans to the point that we're actually curating all sorts of what I call digital native type of programs and offerings to go after and support these companies or even these small groups of developers in a way that is meaningful. It's secure for our customers if they choose to adopt that, and that our customers can find those that have passed some of those criteria. And you'll start to see a lot of those on our marketplace.
And we're seeing a lot of it's not just your ISVs that are on your marketplace now. There are actual rank and file resellers and service providers that are now in your marketplace selling agents and selling the services. I think that's, opening up a whole new avenue of opportunity for your channel partners in your ecosystem. These are things we've talked about this in the past, is that, your partners, in particular Microsoft being a good one, being a platform by purest definition, is telling the partners to develop their own IP, develop their methodologies, use you as guidance, but really create something of value independent of you. And now they're actually creating not just processes, they're creating the mechanism for doing it.
Yeah. Well, our one of the greatest things about Microsoft, I think, is our P2P, right? This partner to partner network. And it's something that I really cherish at Microsoft is that Microsoft doesn't have to have this one-to-one relationship with everyone. We don't have to be Microsoft to partner and partner back to Microsoft. We actually create this network of all of the partners being able to partner together. And the marketplace is a platform where they then can bring their ingenuity, their creativity out into the market together. What we're also seeing is much more depth by industry. And that is what the customers are expecting today. These agents aren't always a horizontal type of solution. Maybe there are some if you're talking about disciplines like HR or finance or whatever, but really, even when you start getting into customer services and support. How you want to do that in retail is fundamentally very different than how you want to do it in healthcare, right? And so that is the opportunity right now for all of these companies to build based on their expertise and their depth of understanding of an industry combined with their technical capability to create these turnkey solutions that all of these customers can adopt from small, medium businesses all the way up to enterprise. So a pretty exciting time. And all we're doing is we're in the middle enabling it with the technology, enabling it with how to actually drive the implementation safely, right? And with accreditation. And then we also facilitate their ability to connect with the customer in the market. It's pretty cool.
So one of the things that we've discovered over the past couple of years is AI is powerful, and I agree with you. I use it myself personally. My organization uses it. It's been a work in progress, to be honest, but it's one of these things like you all of a sudden you go, how did we do this before? But the thing that we keep hearing from the end user community, whether it's an enterprise or an SMB, is that all of this is contingent upon having access to data. and having that data have, it's not just that the data has to be there, but you also have to have confidence that it's correct, it's clean, that it's organized, as you've mentioned a few times, that it's secure. It seems to be this daunting problem. How is Microsoft working with the customers and the partners on creating better data management and data hygiene practices?
Absolutely. Well, we tend to refer to it as the iceberg, right?
Hmm.
So the top of the iceberg is the conversation around AI. But the reality is, in order to have that conversation, you have to go down deep in what's below the waters. And that's where the conversation around the data and not just the data, but the security around the data. Do the right people have access to the right data? So we've all lived in corporations and in companies, and there's sometimes very confidential data, and there's certain data that's available to everyone. And then there's also data that's only available internally versus externally. You can imagine that's the case for Microsoft, right? So it also starts not just with making sure your data is clean, but also how do you have the right indicators for permissions for the depth of the data? And that's one of the things that we've been working really hard on. And that's one of the gifts that M365 also allows you to do. If you've been watching the evolution of that, it is allowing you to tag your Word documents, your Excel files with all these permissions in a way that then will support, when you put an agent in front of it, who has access to what to feed the right information back. That's when we talk about that iceberg effect. It's just, they're all small pieces to the overall puzzle, but you have to go below that water level to really assess if your data is clean. Does it have the right permissions? Is it confidential? Is it sensitive and data secure? And that's what Microsoft is here to help you with.
Well, one of the things that you've done, and I've actually was stunned the first time I went surfing around Microsoft's domain looking for how you're instructing partners or enabling them, giving them guidance. You have an immense library of best practices and use cases and just I could just call it inspirational documentation to help the partners understand. But you and I, and just so everybody's benefit, we always prep for a podcast like this. And, and Nina and I were talking about this before, that you had said is that it is a challenge for you to even keep up with the pace. How is it that Microsoft is keeping up with, you have 600,000 partners worldwide. You have millions of customers out there. How is it that you're keeping pace with the changes and you have to make in order to keep current, even just with the basic documentation?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? AI really, our lives all looked. You said 3 years ago. I think even 2 years ago, even 18 months ago, all our lives looked a little bit different. At least mine did. And today, that pace of change is something that I have to stay on top of weekly, not even monthly, weekly. And so having responsibility and to make sure that our partners are also updated, that they're on the cutting edge with Microsoft is, in all fairness, is a daunting task. So how do we go about doing that? Certainly we have traditional traditional skilling classes that are on demand, right? But by the time sometimes you get those out there, the world has evolved, right? So what we found is that we've actually had to be a lot more nimble and organic in how we go about doing that. We do a lot more to ride-alongs where we bring partners along with us to top clients. We will prime a lot of implementations and then bring the partners through to do most of the work so we can help them skill up while on the job as well. We have a lot of forums, quick tips and tricks that we share internally and with partners. And now what I think is the most exciting is that we've actually looked to our partner ecosystem to help each other. So where it used to always be you went to Partner Center or the company's website to get all of your enablement, instead it's these community forums where our partners are helping each other because we're all learning and growing from each other. So the use cases aren't just use cases that are coming from Microsoft. They're use cases that are coming from our partners, and they don't mind sharing them. They love sharing them because in that, they're all learning from each other, and it's moving at that speed. Now, in the last year, we took on a challenge, and we've already scaled over 1.5 million partner people in depth. But the skilling has also evolved, you have to say, right? From a technical skilling also into the sales and adoption curve. So the change management. So now we look at the skilling, not just technically, but how do you position? How do you have the conversation with the client, right? It's very different. You're not selling a product anymore. You're selling an enabler to solve their problems. It's a very different conversation.
What I was going to say is that you've touched on something that we've talked about for years, but we've never really seemed to solve the puzzle on, which is focusing in on the customer experience and the customer outcomes. So that I've always disliked the way that we've traditionally sold tech as a defining ROI as a cost savings. Is that we're going to reduce your cost somehow, and that's going to be the measure of success. And here we are, we're now talking about this, is that we're going to make you go further, farther, faster, and you're going to enjoy the journey.
Yeah. And bending that curve on innovation, right?
Right.
That is actually what in the C suite, that's what they're really after. Yes, of course, they want to economize on some expenses, or they want to do more with the people they have, right? Versus having to have your fixed costs go up, right? But that bending the curve on innovation is what's so exciting. So in the enablement, to kind of get to your point, years ago, we used to talk about solution selling. Solution selling is the only way to sell right now. And that means you have to listen more than you tell. You have to understand what their real pain points are and what would make a difference in their business or what their competition is doing. So preparing even for a sales call is very, very different today than it might have been before. Before you were thinking about your demo and maybe putting the logo on and customizing it a little bit and maybe having a little slight reading their annual report and maybe, those were the types of things you did. Today, it's very, very different. You're going to go out there and understand what are the trends in the market, what's happening, what are the biggest challenges that your customers are facing, right? It's a very different way. And so that's where we're spending a lot of time skilling.
So I can't let a conversation like this go without bringing up the human element. And
Mhm.
there are people out there who, they were saying it softly before and behind closed doors, and now they're saying it out in the open that AI is coming after your job. I'm of the mind that AI should be like any tool that we've invented before. It should be making our lives easier, but not displacing us. How do you infuse the human element or retain the human element in this conversation about AI when there's so much temptation to think about AI as reductive?
I don't think of it as reductive, in all honesty. I think of it as complementary. If you've used, for example, Copilot or any tool out there, let's just be fair to the audience here, right? What it is doing is it's helping you be more efficient and getting to the essence of what the conversation needs to be or the proposal needs to look like or answering a customer's inquiry without you going through a big catalog of information, right? What it is allowing us to do is be more efficient with our time, but it's also allowing us to form deeper connection with our clients, understand their problems and their challenges more, be more human in the interaction. I look at in the channel space, in the partner space in general, and I tend to think of channel as more like our resellers and distributors and so forth, but in that partner landscape, the conversations that I'm able to have today are a little bit different than even what I was having 18 to 24 months ago. What I'm asking of my people to do is different. I'm asking them to look at trends, growth opportunities. What are quick wins with some of the partners versus just trying to line up the products or line up account to account, right? Those are basics, but now we can use AI to help us do that analysis. Now it's on, okay, how do we actually drive deeper into that lasting relationship? What other things could we see? Okay, we have the sunset of Windows 11. Which partners does that impact? Which ISVs does that impact? Okay, now we have other sales motions. Those are transformative ways of going about it. And it just allows us to be smarter, faster, and more effective in what we're doing. But at the end of the day, I don't ever see a time where we lose that human element, that human inspiration that we need to have, the human connection that at the end of the day, we say, hey, I want to do business with you. I trust how you engage. You trust how I engage. Let's shake hands and let's go together. I don't see that changing, but how we get to that changing.
I always think back to that meme by some artist put out that says, "I don't want AI to do my art. I want my AI to do my laundry for me, so I can do my art." And I think that that's the way we really should be thinking about it. Is like, yes, remove the mundane, but let us be more human with each other. And I love what you just said about this as well, is that looking at the trends, looking at the opportunities. This is something you mentioned solution selling. We've talked about being consultative even within our partner relationships, but it always seems to come down to that call at the end of the quarter saying, "You got a sale for me." But now it feels like we are actually getting to the point of where we can have these meaningful conversations. I want to, turn this though to say too, because there are, as much as AI has really exploded, and yes, Microsoft and Copilot has been a real catalyst for this. I mean, it's amazing to see the adoption rate for Copilot. But there are still partners out there on the sidelines, and not only are they out on the sidelines, but there are partners out there who are sticking to their legacy models, and they're feeling a bit frustrated about budgets being trapped because money's been reallocated to AI projects. What do you say to them? How do you get them, or what guidance do you give them to get off the sidelines and to get, as you said, dive into this?
I mean, the conversations that we're having with customers, and I'm actually having with the ISVs, is, for example, if they have an on-premise solution, you have to get to the cloud, right? In order for you to even have access to the data to start doing these AI types of agentic computing principles. The way that the customer is asking to be able to take advantage of their data real estate is different. It's not in pipes anymore. And I spent 13 and a half years at SAP, right? Great company. I love SAP. And it is the nervous system of a lot of companies. But the way the client now wants to be able to extract what's in SAP, extract what's in Office, extract what happened in meetings that they had, and then be able to have that aggregated. If you're on the sidelines and you're not diving into this world, you might not feel it now, but you're definitely going to feel it 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And I'm not talking 10 years. I'm talking 2, 3, 4 years, because the conversations are shifting very, very quickly. And no longer can, I think, a lot of companies afford to just build their own little microcosm of information.
And I'm of the mind as well that, whenever I hear, pick one of the analyst firms, they'll say, "Oh, this is going to be this too." Yeah, IDC said this a couple of years ago. It's like 2027 is going to be this big inflection point. Everything's going to hit critical mass by then. I'm like going, okay, it does take time for that to happen, but we are experiencing this in real time. It's not like we're waiting for it to come to us. It's here, and we feel it almost every day. And I think that that's what makes this period, or this AI disruption, different from other types of technologies that have come before.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And it's not just coming from companies and corporate adoption. It's coming from individual. Look at the younger generations and how they're communicating, or what they're building, what they're learning in school, or even how they're solving problems in school sometimes, right? The reality is that this is both a consumer adoption as well as a corporate adoption, all coming together at the same time and creating and sparking such innovation right now. I mean, bold ideas right now, together with a transformational sort of agility or ability to drive impact. That coming together, it's pretty combustible right now, and it's pretty exciting, and that's what we're seeing.
So, Neil, I want to close on this. There's a number of your peers out there that are looking at, and let's not be so negative about this, but they're under budget pressures. A lot of channel budgets are being cut. The expectations are increasing. So they're looking for the lift that you're describing. What advice do you give to them about AI adoption in terms of channel organizations and management? And how do you think AI is going to change the channel from a vendor perspective, for people like you and the teams that work for you? How do you see AI changing the way that they work and the way they interoperate with the partners over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, the first recommendation that I'm giving right now to a lot of folks in the channels is is one is the customer conversation has to change. And it's no longer about a product or a particular solution. You might want to talk about AI or you might want to talk about customer service, but very quickly the conversation is moving towards what is your data real estate and how are you doing that securely? And then how do you aggregate that to take advantage of it with AI? So I very much encourage people to think about that adoption curve and where they're headed and the language that they're using. Secondly, when you think about the operations of how you're running things today, that is a great place for optimization, I would say, in the channel, right? Their agents can do so much for resell distributors to resellers, for services partners, ISVs, everything from coaching and learning to solving problems to helping with contract build, all sorts of things. So being curious about how it can actually come in and change your day-to-day practices, really, really important. And lastly, get started internally. Very quickly, there is an inflection point where you realize just how exciting a time it is when you start just playing with it and move from playing to actually applying it to some of the day-to-day things that you do. And all of a sudden your mind grasps it and you say, wow, I look smarter. I look better. I am more effective at my job. I have more meaningful conversations with people because I have this helper helping guide me and kind of look around corners for me to make sure that I show up as best as possible. So to our partners, I encourage them on their language, how they're talking to the customers, on their skilling, on their operations, and then on their own personal adoption.
Great advice. Great advice. Nita Harding, thank you for joining us. It's been great having you here on Changing Channels.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this edition of Changing Channels. Again, I want to thank our guest, Nita Harding, the Corporate Vice President of America's Global Partner Solutions at Microsoft, for joining us today. And I want to thank all of you for joining us again here on Changing Channels. We do this podcast to help spread information and best practices in channel operations and strategies for everyone in the industry. If you like what we're doing here, please hit like, hit subscribe, tell your friends about Changing Channels, and also check out our other podcasts, In the Margins and The Network Effect. And of course, please come to Channelnomics and check out all the great research and best practices we have for making the channel better for everyone. Until next time, I'm Larry Walsh.